You know, sometimes the people you raise, the ones you love more than anything in this world, they end up being the very ones who make you feel the smallest, the most invisible. I never thought I'd say this about my own children, my own flesh and blood, but when I overheard their plan, my heart shattered into pieces. They changed the group chat name to Family Vacation without me. Did you see that? That was my granddaughter whispering to my grandson. And they laughed about it, as if leaving me out was some kind of joke. At first, I thought maybe it was just kids being careless, forgetting to add me into some silly online group. But when I leaned a little closer, when I really listened, my blood went cold. They weren't just forgetting me. They were planning a whole trip without me: flights, hotels, activities, everything. And here's the part that still makes my chest ache. They were doing it with my credit card. Yes, you heard me right. The very same card I had handed over again and again when they needed groceries, school supplies, gas money. The same card I used to make sure they were never without, and they were using it to cut me out. I'll tell you this much: betrayal doesn't always come like a thunderstorm. Sometimes it comes like a whisper, like a small laugh behind a closed door. That day, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sunlight pouring across the old wood, trying to balance my checkbook. It's something I do every Sunday afternoon: habit, comfort, discipline. I learned a long time ago that a woman has to keep track of every penny if she wants to survive. I reached for my cup of tea, steam rising into the air, when I heard my daughter's voice in the next room. "Did you confirm the flights yet? Mom will never know until it's too late. We'll just tell her the tickets sold out." I froze. My hand didn't even make it back to the saucer. My daughter, my very own daughter, whispering like a conspirator. Then my son-in-law's laugh. "Yeah, and with her card, it's basically free for us. She won't notice. She never checks the statements closely." Oh, how wrong he was. My eyes fell to the open folder on the table, my bank statements, neatly clipped together. I check every transaction, every dollar, every cent. And in that moment, staring down at the numbers, my pulse thundering in my ears, I realized I had all the proof I needed. Airline charges, hotel deposits, restaurant bookings, all in the last 2 weeks, all without a single word to me. It's funny, isn't it, how betrayal has a smell. For me, it smelled like bergamot tea turning cold, like lemon biscuits left untouched on a plate. My chest tightened as if the walls themselves were pressing in on me. I wanted to march into that living room, slam down the papers, and scream. But something stopped me. Not fear, no. Something colder. Something sharper. By dawn, I had made my decision. If they thought I was too tired, too slow, too weak, they were about to learn the truth. I might be old, I might be weary, but I am not powerless. And if they could erase me from their vacation, I would erase the vacation from existence. You learn a lot about people when you pretend not to know their secrets. That week, I became invisible in my own home, though not in the way they intended. They thought they were keeping me in the dark, but I was watching. I was listening. Every word, every smirk, every little detail they let slip became fuel for the fire building inside me. On Monday morning, I heard my daughter giggling on the phone. Yes, I confirmed the Ocean View suite. She has no clue. It'll be the best trip ever. Ocean View, suite. My card was paying for every bit of luxury, and yet they couldn't spare me even a folding chair at the table. I kept my hands busy kneading dough for bread, wiping the counter, sweeping crumbs into my palm, but inside, my thoughts sharpened like knives. I asked myself, what's worse, being left out or being used to pay for it? Both, I decided. Both cut too deep. On Tuesday evening, they spread brochures across the living room table. I passed by quietly, pretending to dust the shelf, but my ears caught every detail. "The snorkeling tour's already booked," my son-in-law said, tapping the glossy pages. "And the dinner cruise too. My daughter added. The laughter that followed was light, carefree. But to me, it was like nails scraping across glass. They were giddy children again, but not with me. Never with me. The very woman who had taught them how to swim, how to pack a suitcase, how to save pennies in a jar for rainy days, now reduced to nothing more than a shadow at the edge of their plans. By Wednesday, the weight of it all nearly broke me. I stood at the sink, staring at the dirty dishes piled high. My reflection warped in the metal of the faucet. My hands trembled as I scrubbed, not from weakness, but from fury barely contained. I remembered birthdays where I stretched $1 until it screamed, just to afford balloons and a cake. I remembered Christmases when I stayed up until dawn, knitting scarves because I couldn't afford store-bought gifts. And I remembered the look in their little eyes, so bright, so trusting as they unwrapped those homemade treasures. "Thank you, Mommy," they used to squeal. Where had that gratitude gone? Where had that love disappeared? Thursday brought the final straw. I walked into the hallway just as my daughter muttered to her husband, "We'll tell her the house needs pest control that weekend. She won't suspect a thing." A voice inside me whispered, "Wait, don't just react. Watch, listen, learn everything first, then strike." And so, I sat there silently, my fingers tightening on the armrest, while the very children I raised plotted a vacation of laughter and sunshine without me. You see, family vacations are not just about beaches and sightseeing. At least, not to me. They were about survival. Back when my husband was alive, we never had the money for big trips. Vacations meant camping in old tents, fishing by the river, sometimes just a picnic at the park with homemade sandwiches. But after he passed, and after I'd worked years to pay off debts, I promised myself that my children, my family, would have the chance to see the world. That's why I saved, scrimped, and scraped. That's why I kept that credit card ready, even when my own shoes had holes in them. I paid for their first trip to Disneyland. I covered the flights. When my son said he wanted to propose in Paris, I even booked the cabins for our annual lake trips, so everyone could gather and laugh together. It was never about the money. It was about love, about togetherness. And now they were turning that love into a weapon. I leaned back in my chair, the sunlight glaring off the checkbook until the numbers blurred. My throat burned, but not from the tea. Why are they doing this to me? That question rattled in my chest over and over. Was I such a burden? Such an embarrassment? Did they really see me as nothing more than a wallet with a heartbeat? The answer came quickly enough, from my daughter's next words. "She's too slow, too tired. We'd just end up babysitting her instead of having fun. This trip is for us, not her." That one sentence sliced through me like a blade. Too slow, too tired. Do they forget the nights I stayed up rocking them when they were sick? Do they forget the mornings I walked them to school in the rain, with holes in my shoes, just so they wouldn't catch cold? Do they forget the years I went without, so they could have more? I wasn't too slow then. I wasn't too tired then. But now that they've grown, now that I've aged, I was nothing but an anchor. I pressed my palm to my chest, steadying my breath. That's when I knew. I wouldn't confront them with anger. I wouldn't beg for a seat at their table. No. I would take back what was mine. I would remind them that every action has consequences. And when the day came for that flight they thought would carry them away from me, they would learn exactly who they were dealing with. That night, I barely slept. The numbers haunted me, scrolling across the insides of my eyelids. The charges, the betrayal, the whispered laughter, pest control. That's what I was to them now. A nuisance to be managed. A problem to be contained. I felt my cheeks burn, my lips press into a thin, hard line. No, I wasn't a pest. I was the foundation beneath their very lives. And soon enough, they would remember that. By Friday, my plan had crystallized. You see, some betrayals demand forgiveness. Some demand patience. But this betrayal, this one demanded action. I pulled out the shoebox I keep tucked under my bed. Inside was everything I've ever saved: billed receipts, bills, records, and yes, every single credit card statement for the last 10 years. I spread them out across my quilt, the paper crackling under my hands. One by one, I traced the numbers, my finger dragging across the charges they thought would disappear into the blur of my old age. But nothing disappears when a mother remembers. And I remembered everything. I called the bank that afternoon. My voice, though trembling with age, carried a sharpness that startled even me. "Yes, I need to review recent charges," I told the representative, as the woman on the other end read out the Storie bookings. Hotel reservations, tour packages. My anger shifted into something else. Power. Because now, I wasn't just a victim of their scheme. I was the owner of the key that could lock or unlock their entire little dream. "I'd like to dispute those charges," I said finally. And just like that, the first domino tipped. Still, I didn't act all at once. No, patience was my ally. That weekend, while they laughed and planned, I remained quiet. I brought tea to the table. I asked polite questions. I smiled when they mentioned things like sunscreen and passports. All the while, I held my secret close to my chest, like a sharp blade hidden in my apron pocket. The look on their faces, when they finally discovered what I had done, that's what I lived for in those days. That's what kept my breath steady when tears threatened to fall. On Sunday, I went to church. I sat in the pew, hands folded, eyes lifted to the stained glass windows. The sermon was about betrayal, about Judas, about how silver can blind the eyes of even the closest companions. I almost laughed right there in the pew, because my own silver, my own hard-earned money, had blinded my children just the same. After the service, I lingered at the steps, letting the sunlight wash over me, and I prayed not for forgiveness, not for peace, but for strength. Strength to do what must be done. By the time Monday rolled around again, I was ready. I walked past the living room, where they were still chattering about excursions and beach, and for the first time in days, I smiled. Not the bitter, trembling smile of a wounded woman, no. The smile of a mother who had finally taken back control, because while they were dreaming of sand between their toes and fruity drinks on the shore, I already knew the truth. When the day came and they stood at the airport clutching their tickets, they would learn a hard lesson. There would be no boarding passes waiting, no sunny beaches, no dream vacation, only the sharp, cold truth. You don't cut out the very person who gave you everything and expect to walk away unscathed. There comes a point in every mother's life when patience runs dry. I had bitten my tongue until it bled, swallowed disrespect until my heart ached, and endured their smirks and whispers like a stone endures the storm. But now, it was my turn. The first thing I did was call the airline. I still remember the way the agent's voice sounded: polite, clipped, professional. She asked for the reservation number, and oh, didn't I have it ready? I had copied it down the night I combed through my credit card statement, my hands shaking with rage, but steady enough to capture every detail. "Yes, ma'am," I told her, "I need to cancel the flights." There was a pause. "All of them?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "Every single one. Full cancellation. Immediately." The click of her keyboard filled the silence, each tap like a drumbeat in my chest. When she finally said the words, "All tickets canceled," ma'am, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It was justice. But I wasn't done. Oh no. Next came the hotel. That shiny ocean view suite they had bragged about like children showing off candy gone. I called the resort, gave them the reservation number, and listened as the manager apologized profusely about losing my business. "Don't worry," I said, my voice steady as steel. "You didn't lose my business. I'm simply correcting a mistake." And when I hung up, I almost laughed. Because that's exactly what I was doing, correcting the mistake of letting my children believe they could treat me like an afterthought while still draining me dry. Then came the tour companies, the snorkeling trip, the dinner cruise, the sightseeing bus. Each one I dismantled with a single phone call. By the end of the afternoon, their entire vacation had evaporated into thin air. It was almost poetic. They had built this dream brick by brick on my back, and I had toppled it with a flick of my wrist. And yet, even then, I wasn't satisfied. Because revenge, without witnesses, is like thunder. Without lightning, it makes no impact. No, I wanted them to feel the sting, to see the ground crumble beneath their feet, just as they had tried to pull the ground out from under mine. So I waited. I didn't say a word. Not a single clue escaped my lips. I cooked dinner. I asked them how their day was. I folded laundry. I smiled when they mentioned the countdown to their trip. Inside, my heart was pounding with anticipation. I imagined it over and over again. The scene played in my mind like a movie. My daughter, standing at the airline counter, her voice sharp with panic. My son-in-law, fumbling through his pockets for tickets that meant nothing. The children whining, confused, tugging at their sleeves. And then the clerk's calm but firm words. "I'm sorry, Ma, but your reservation was canceled." Oh, how I savored that thought. Because it wasn't cruelty. No, it was clarity. They needed to learn that every action has consequences. And this was theirs. In the quiet of my room that night, I sat by the window, staring at the moonlight pooling across the floor. I thought about the little girl I used to be, the one who dreamed of family, of children who would grow up to love and protect her. And I thought about the woman I had become, the one who gave everything, only to be cast aside when it suited them. But as the clock ticked softly in the background, I realized something. They hadn't taken my power. I had simply forgotten I still had it. The days leading up to their trip were almost unbearable. They were so smug, so certain. My daughter spent hours packing swimsuits and sundresses. She pranced through the hallways, humming tropical tunes, her joy spilling into every corner of the house. "Oh, Mom," she said once, barely looking at me, "we'll bring you back a souvenir. Something small, maybe a key. As if I were some distant relative to be placated with trinkets. I forced a smile, but inside, my stomach knotted with both rage and anticipation. "Don't worry about me," I said softly. "I'll be just fine." And, oh, I meant it. Finally, the morning came. They bustled around the house in a frenzy of excitement, suitcases rolling, car keys jingling, laughter bouncing off the walls. "Wish us luck, Mom," my son-in-law called as they loaded the last bag. "Yes," I replied, my voice smooth as honey. "Good luck." And with that, they were gone. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, and waited. It didn't take long. The phone rang within the hour. First, it was my daughter. Her voice was sharp, panicked. "Mom, did you cancel the flights?" I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it in her bones. Then I said, calm and steady, "I canceled what I paid for. You don't get to use me and throw me away. Not anymore." Her gasp on the other end was music. The second call came from my son. His tone was angrier, sharper. "How could you do this?" he demanded. "How could you?" I shot back. "You locked me out of my own family. You used my money. You treated me like I was nothing. So I made sure you'd feel what that's like." There was no response at first, just the sound of him breathing, heavy, furious. Finally, he muttered, "You'll regret this." "No," I said, my voice like steel. "You will." And I hung up. I sat back in my chair, my chest rising and falling with deep, steady breaths. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, stronger.com. I hadn't just canceled their vacation. I had reclaimed my place, because I wasn't a doormat. I wasn't an afterthought. I was their mother. The one who gave them life, who built the very foundation they stood on. And now, they knew without me, they had nothing. The house was too quiet for the next few days. No laughter. No chatter. No smug talk about palm trees and sandy beaches. Just silence. And I savored every second of it. But silence never lasts forever. The storm always comes home. And on the fourth day, I heard the slam of the front door. They were back. I stayed seated in the living room, hands folded neatly in my lap, waiting. I didn't rise. I didn't greet them. I didn't ask how their trip went. I let them come to me. My daughter stormed in first. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red from either crying or raged, was hard to tell. "How could you, Mom?" she hissed, her voice shaking. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" We stood there, with the kids crying, the clerk staring at us like fools. "Good," I interrupted. My voice was calm. Almost too calm. "Maybe you got just a taste of what it feels like to be left behind. To be treated like nothing." Her mouth opened, but no words came. She just stood there, trembling. Then my son-in-law entered. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched. "You embarrassed us," he spat. "You ruined everything. We lost money." The kids were devastated. "Do you even care?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Did you care when you used my credit card without asking? Did you care when you locked me out of the vacation? When you took my generosity and turned it into exclusion? Did you care when you laughed in my face while spending my money?" His face flushed. He looked away. Because the truth was a blade he couldn't face. And then, as expected, came the chorus of guilt. "We just wanted some time for ourselves. You're overreacting. It wasn't that big of a deal." I listened to every excuse, every desperate attempt to twist the story in their favor. And when they finished, I spoke slowly. "You didn't just take a vacation. You tried to erase me from my own family. You wanted my money, but not my presence. My help, but not my company. And I won't allow it anymore." The room went quiet. Even the children, standing in the doorway with wide, confused eyes, seemed to sense the weight of my words. I softened my tone as I turned to them. "Your grandmother loves you," I said gently. "But love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means teaching lessons. Hard lessons, sometimes. They didn't fully understand. But they would, one day." My daughter tried one last time. "Mom, we needed this trip. We deserved it." "So did I replied, my voice trembling with both sadness and strength. "I deserved respect. I deserved inclusion. I deserved to be treated like family, not like an ATM. But you decided otherwise, and now, you've reaped what you sowed." Tears welled in her eyes. She turned her face away, unable to meet mine. The following weeks were icy. They avoided me. Short words, cold glances, doors closing just a little too hard. But I didn't bend. For once in my life, I didn't apologize. Because deep down, I knew I had done the right thing. Neighbors whispered, "Of course." News traveled fast. "Did you hear? Her kids tried to go on vacation without her on her demand. She canceled the whole thing." Some clucked their tongues. Others smirked with approval. But me, I walked with my head high. Because shame only clings to the guilty. And I was not guilty. One evening, as the sun set in a golden wash across the kitchen floor, my daughter finally came to me. Her eyes were softer this time. "Mom," she said quietly, I think I understand now." She hesitated, then continued. "We took advantage of you. We thought we could just use you. And I'm sorry." Her voice cracked on the last word. And though my heart ached to embrace her, I didn't move. "Not yet. Sorry is a start," I said gently. "But respect, that's what I want. And if I don't get it, there will be no more favors. No more second chances." She nodded, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. And for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of the little girl I once held in my arms. As for my son, he never apologized, but that was fine, because I hadn't done this for him. I had done it for me. In the quiet of my room that night, I felt a deep calm settle over me. For years, I had been afraid of losing them, afraid of conflict, afraid of standing my ground. But in standing up for myself, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, to keep your dignity, you have to risk being disliked. And I was finally okay with that. There comes a point in life when you realize peace matters more than approval. And that's exactly what I found after that storm passed. The tension in the house lingered for weeks, maybe even months. Little things like the way my daughter avoided eye contact, or the way my son-in-law muttered under his breath when I walked by still stung. But you know what? I didn't let it consume me, because I had discovered something far more valuable than their fleeting anger. I had rediscovered myself. For years, I had been the giver. The one who babysat at the last minute. The one who lent money without question. The one who paid for the extras, the treats, the trips, the things they couldn't afford but desperately wanted. And I gave and gave and gave. Until one day, I realized I had nothing left but crumbs of dignity. But that vacation incident, that was the turning point. When they locked me out of their plans, they didn't just exclude me from a trip. They excluded me from respect, from belonging, from family. And I knew then respect is not optional. It is the foundation. So I made a vow to myself. Never again would I allow my love to be mistaken for weakness. Never again would I allow my kindness to be treated like a bottomless well. Never again would I sit quietly while they took and took, leaving me empty. And here's the thing. Something strange happened after I stood my ground. They started to see me differently. Not immediately, no, it took time. But little by little, I noticed shifts. My daughter began asking before borrowing. The grandchildren started visiting me, not just when they wanted something, but to actually be with me. Even my son-in-law, stubborn as he was, stopped making snide remarks in my presence. It was almost as if, in demanding respect, I finally taught them how to give it. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes people need boundaries not because they don't love you, but because they don't realize how far they've crossed the line. One evening, months later, we sat together at the table again. The same family that once schemed to leave me behind. The same family that once thought of me as just a wallet with legs. But this time was different. There was no tension. No secrets. Just quiet conversation. Gentle laughter. And for the first time in years, mutual respect. And I thought to myself, maybe they'll never fully understand the pain they caused me that day. Maybe they'll never truly know how close they came to losing me. Not physically, but emotionally. But that's okay. Because I know I didn't stay silent. I know I didn't let myself be erased. I know I took back my dignity, my voice, my power. And if you're listening to this story, I hope you take this lesson with you. Never let anyone, not even your family, make you feel small. Love is beautiful. Love is patient. Love is giving. But love is not slavery. Love is not being used. Love is not letting yourself vanish while everyone else shines. So if you ever find yourself in my shoes, if you ever feel like you're being taken for granted, used, or pushed aside, remember this. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to draw lines. You are allowed to put yourself first. Not because you don't love them, but because you've finally learned to love yourself. That canceled vacation. It wasn't revenge. It was a reminder. A reminder to them, and to me, that respect is not given, it is earned. And once you demand it, once you stop apologizing for existing, once you take back your voice, you'll never lose yourself again. I sit here now, in the golden light of another day, and I feel nothing but peace. Not bitterness, not regret, just peace. Because I know I did the right thing, and sometimes, That's the only trip worth taking.